The day I became the most hated man in Maplewood. Park Estates was also the day I learned just how fragile power can be when it rests on fear. It started with a fine, $500. That's what the HOA charged me, for nothing more than sitting with my daughter in the community park, casting lines into the pond. To them, it was just another citation. To me, it was the spark of a war. My name is Daniel Cross. Not long ago, I was living the dream most people imagine but never reach. 15 years in venture capital, high-stakes investments, and long nights chasing deals finally paid off. I cashed out of tech startups with enough money to retire at 42. I had everything money could buy, except time. Last year, cancer stole my wife, Elena. She was my anchor, my balance, and her loss left me and my 14-year-old daughter, Sophie, stranded in grief. The only thing that gave us peace was fishing, the last ritual we'd shared as a family. So when I looked for a new home, I searched for somewhere quiet, somewhere with water. Maplewood Park Estates seemed perfect. A manicured neighborhood built around a green space with a wide pond, walking trails, and shady oak trees. The realtor smiled when I asked about the HOA. "It's just the usual things," she said. "Lawn care, paint colors, keeping up appearances." I believed her. I shouldn't have, because power attracts people who crave it. And in Maplewood Park Estates, that person was Marjorie Lang, the HOA president, mid-50s, designer clothes, a smile that felt more like a threat than a greeting. To the community, she was a watchdog. To me, she was the beginning of a war I never wanted, but refused to lose. It happened on a quiet Saturday morning. Sophie and I were at the park, sitting at the edge of the pond. For the first time in weeks, I saw her smile. She had just reeled in a small sunfish, her laughter ringing across the water. For a moment, I thought maybe we were healing, and then came the voice. "Excuse me. What do you think you're doing?" She was standing behind us. Marjorie. Her blonde hair sculpted, her tablet clutched like a weapon. The tone of her voice wasn't curiosity. It was accusation. "We're just fishing," I said calmly, trying to enjoy the park. She didn't answer. She tapped her tablet, scrolled, then looked at me like I had trespassed into a palace. "Fishing is prohibited. It's a violation of Maplewood Park HOA regulations. The fine is $500. I laughed, thinking it was a mistake. The realtor told us fishing was allowed. That was one of the reasons we moved here. Her smile tightened. The regulation was updated last month. Every resident was notified by email. Ignorance of the rules does not exempt you from following them. Sophie's face fell. Her little hands clutched the fishing pole like she'd done something wrong. And when I saw her eyes well with tears, something inside me hardened. I didn't argue, not then. I simply said, "Send me the regulation in writing." But that moment lit the fuse. Later that night, after Sophie went to bed, I checked every email folder, every spam filter. Nothing, no update, no rule change. But what I did find was worse. Photographs online of Marjorie herself, hosting wine parties by the very same pond. Her friends laughing, music blaring. Apparently the ban on park use didn't apply to her. The hypocrisy was clear. The abuse of power, even clearer. And so I began to dig. The next morning I met Henry Dalton, a retired attorney who lived 3 houses down. Walking his dog, he spotted me frowning at the HOA notice taped to my mailbox. He chuckled bitterly. "Let me guess," he said. "You've met Marjorie, and she's already fined you." That was how I learned the truth. Marjorie had been president for nearly a decade. She used the HOA as her personal kingdom. Selective enforcement, excessive fines, and anyone who pushed back, harassed until they sold their home, often for far less than it was worth. "Most people keep their heads down," Henry told me. "It's easier than fighting her." But I wasn't most people. Henry invited me to his home later that afternoon. Over coffee, he pulled out a stack of old documents, HOA bylaws, property records, financial statements. Buried inside was the first crack in Marjorie's armor. The park wasn't owned by the HOA. It was still legally owned by the original developers, Summit Crest Corporation, under a lease agreement that was set to expire in less than 2 months. When that lease ended, the park's future was uncertain. Summit Crest could renew the lease with the HOA, sell the land to them, or sell it to someone else entirely. That someone else could be me. For the first time since Elena's death, I felt alive, not happy, not whole, but driven. If Marjorie wanted to play games with rules and power, then I'd play too. And I would play to win. This wasn't just about a fine anymore. It was about something much bigger. It was about taking back our peace, about giving my daughter a place to heal, about standing up to someone who had bullied an entire community into silence. I looked at the pond that evening from my window, and for the first time I didn't see just water. I saw the battleground, and I knew the war had only just begun. The SUV wasn't the last sign. Within days, neighbors who'd spoken with me started receiving new fines in their mailboxes, some for grass half an inch too long, others for leaving porch lights on past midnight. It was intimidation, pure and simple. But intimidation only works when people feel alone. So we met again. Not in Henry's living room this time, but in my garage. We pulled folding chairs into a circle, taped blankets over the windows, and whispered like fugitives. That night, we named ourselves the Residents' Council. Our first mission was simple: collect evidence. Photos, videos, records of fines, anything that showed the HOA abusing its power. One neighbor, Lisa, brought a folder thick with letters from Marjorie. Another, Tom, had saved every notice since 2015. Henry brought out legal precedents, cases where courts had sided against HOAs. And Sophie, sweet, determined Sophie, insisted on helping. She filmed our meetings on her tablet, saying, "People should know the truth." The more we dug, the darker it got. Money was missing from HOA budgets, thousands of dollars allocated to repairs that had never been done, landscaping contracts paid to companies that didn't exist, and all of it traced back to one person, Marjorie. The woman who fined us for fishing was fishing her own neighbors' wallets, but exposing her wouldn't be easy. She had allies, board members who owed her favors, neighbors too scared to speak. We needed more than evidence. We needed leverage. And then we got it. One night, Henry handed me a USB drive. "I shouldn't have this," he said, voice low. "But a friend who used to work IT for the HOA gave it to me before he moved." It's their emails. I plugged it in. Thousands of messages. Some routine, some petty, but a few explosive. Conversations about manipulating votes, threatening homeowners with foreclosure, even bribing a local inspector. This wasn't just corruption. It was criminal. And if we played it right, it could bring her down. The next HOA meeting was packed. Dozens of residents sat in folding chairs, eyes shifting nervously as Marjorie walked in. Clipboard in hand, smile tight and sharp, she launched into her speech about community standards and preserving property values. But I stood up before she could finish. "Before you go on, Marjorie, I have a few questions." The room went silent. Every eye turned to me. I held up a stack of papers. "Can you explain why HOA funds over $50,000 were paid to companies that don't exist? Or why these emails show board members discussing how to manipulate votes?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marjorie's smile flickered, then hardened. "Mr. Cross," she said, voice like ice. "Sit down. This is not the place." "No," I cut her off. "This is exactly the place. These people deserve to know how you've been using their money and their trust." Chaos erupted. Some neighbors shouted in anger. Others whispered in shock. A few defended her, but the tide was shifting. Marjorie slammed her gavel. "Enough! Security!" Two men in uniform stepped forward. Not police, hired guards. They moved toward me. Henry stood too. "Touch him and you'll regret it," he barked, voice carrying the authority of years in the courtroom. The guards hesitated. Marjorie's face turned red. "This meeting is adjourned," she snapped, storming out. But the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. For the first time, the community saw her for what she was. That night, though, I realized the cost. My car tires were slashed. A brick smashed through my window. A note, written in bold black ink. "Stop, or next time it won't be a warning." This was no longer just politics, it was war. Fear spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Some residents backed away, too afraid to get involved. Others grew bolder, energized by the truth. The Residents' Council pressed on. We organized secret meetings, drafted petitions, and even contacted local journalists. But every step we took, Marjorie countered. Fines doubled. Threats escalated. People started whispering about moving away. One night, Sophie came to me, tears in her eyes. "Dad, what if they hurt you? What if they hurt us?" I knelt down, holding her hands. "Sweetheart, sometimes doing the right thing is dangerous, but if we stay silent, nothing changes." Her voice trembled. "Mom wouldn't want you to give up." And that was it. My resolve hardened. We launched our plan. At the next meeting, we didn't just confront Marjorie. We revealed everything. The missing money, the fake companies, the emails. And this time we live streamed it. Phones were out, cameras rolling, neighbors watching from their homes. She tried to shut it down. She screamed, threatened, even lunged at Henry. But it was too late. The truth was out. Police sirens wailed outside. The real cops this time, not her hired guards. 2 officers walked in, calm but firm. "Marjorie Lang, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." Gasps filled the room as they placed her in handcuffs. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then applause broke out. Neighbors cheered, some even cried. The nightmare was over. But as I stood there, Sophie clutching my hand, I knew the fight wasn't finished. Because power doesn't disappear. It waits for someone else to claim it. And we had a choice to make. Would Maplewood Park Estates fall into the same trap again? Or could we build something better? Marjorie was gone. Marjorie was gone. For weeks, the neighborhood buzzed with relief. Kids played in the park without fear of fines. Neighbors waved again, smiles replacing scowls. For the first time, Maplewood Park Estates felt human. But freedom comes with responsibility. The HOA wasn't just Marjorie. There was still a board, still bylaws, still power waiting for someone to claim it. Some neighbors wanted to dissolve the HOA entirely. Others feared chaos if we did. Arguments flared. Old grudges resurfaced. I realized something chilling. Without a new vision, everything we'd fought for could crumble. So the Residents' Council stepped forward. We drafted a proposal, not to destroy the HOA, but to rebuild it. Transparent elections, limited powers, no more arbitrary fines. And above all, the park would no longer be HOA property. We would buy it, together. That single idea changed everything. It wasn't easy. Some resisted, fearing higher dues. Others still clung to Marjorie's shadow. But slowly, piece by piece, the tide turned. Neighbors donated, fundraisers were held. Even kids sold lemonade for the cause. In 3 months, we raised enough. The deed was signed. The park was ours. That day, Sophie stood at the water's edge, fishing rod in hand, eyes bright with hope. She whispered, "Mom would have loved this." And for the first time, I believed her. Elections followed. Henry, old and wise, refused the presidency but agreed to guide us. Lisa became treasurer. Tom took maintenance. And me? Against my own instincts, I was voted president. I didn't want the title, but maybe that was the point. Leadership should never be about wanting power. It should be about protecting people from it. Just when life felt normal again, the shadows returned. One evening, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No stamp, no sender, just my name in black ink. Inside was a single sentence. She was never working alone. My blood ran cold. Later that night, a neighbor spotted a black SUV idling near the park. No plates, same as before. Had Marjorie been a pawn? Was someone bigger pulling the strings? The thought haunted me, and though police investigated, nothing concrete was found. But I knew better. Power doesn't vanish, it shifts. And somewhere out there, someone was waiting to reclaim what Marjorie had lost. Months passed. The park blossomed, literally. Flowers, laughter, life. Families picnicked, kids rode bikes, Sophie caught her first base. The neighborhood wasn't perfect, but it was free. For now. At the annual meeting, I stood before my neighbors, looking out at faces no longer divided by fear. "We can't erase the past," I said. "But we can learn from it. This place, our homes, our park, they're worth protecting. Not through control, not through fear, but through trust." Applause echoed warm and genuine. For the first time in years, I felt pleasure. But peace is fragile. On a quiet Sunday morning, Sophie and I walked through the park. Sunlight danced on the water, birds sang in the trees. And then I saw it. Across the street, at the corner of Maplewood Drive, a man stood watching. Tall, dark suit, sunglasses. When I looked his way, he didn't move. Didn't flinch, just watched. I blinked, and in an instant he was gone. Was it paranoia? A trick of the mind? Or the beginning of something new? I don't know, but as I held Sophie's hand tighter, one truth became clear. This story wasn't over. Because power never dies, it only waits. The moment I realized the park wasn't even HOA property, everything changed. That night I sat at my desk, surrounded by files Henry Dalton had given me. Old contracts, land deeds, bylaws no one in the community had read in decades. Piece by piece, a picture started to form. The HOA wasn't protecting us. It was controlling us. And Marjorie Lang, she was at the center of it all. Every rule, every fine, every whispered threat. It was less about maintaining property values and more about tightening her grip on power. Henry leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee as he spoke. "She's clever, Daniel. She hides behind the bylaws. But the truth is, half of what she does wouldn't stand a chance in court. She's counting on people being too scared or too tired to fight back. I looked at Sophie asleep on the couch, her fishing rod leaning against the wall. For the first time in months, she'd had a smile on her face, only for Marjorie to snatch it away. No, I wasn't going to let that happen again. The next day I started small. Casual conversations at mailboxes, on sidewalks, during morning walks. I asked neighbors how they really felt about the HOA. At first they whispered. Some even looked over their shoulders before answering. But once the words started spilling out, they didn't stop. Fines for garden gnomes. Fines for kids' bicycles left in driveways. Fines for having a backyard barbecue with too many guests. One man told me he'd been fined for having his trash can visible 5 minutes before pickup. 5 minutes. The stories piled up, and with each one, a picture of Marjorie's perfect neighborhood came into sharper focus. But something else happened too. People began to see me not as an outsider, but as someone willing to fight back. By the end of the week, a small group gathered in Henry's living room. 6 of us, tired, angry, but ready. We didn't have a name yet, but we had a purpose. Henry spread the documents out across the table. Here's the key. The HOA doesn't own the park. Their lease runs out in 60 days. If we move fast, we can buy it before they do. Imagine what that means, Daniel. No more fines. No more bans. This park belongs to us. My heart raced. For the first time, I could see a way forward. But then came the sound of tires outside. Headlights cut across the blinds. A car slowed, then stopped. Henry froze. The others glanced nervously at each other. We peeked through the curtains. There, idling in front of Henry's house, was a black SUV, tinted windows. No plates we could read. It sat there for a full minute, engine rumbling, watching. Then, just as suddenly, it pulled away. Silence filled the room. Marjorie knows, Henry muttered. She's already watching us. That night, lying awake, I realized something chilling. This wasn't going to be a simple neighborhood dispute. This was going to be a war, and wars have casualties.